So before I go on, I should just alert you all to the fact that we actually have a new documentary for the channel. This is Carl's brilliant The Death of Man, in which he basically chronicles the history of the Enlightenment and philosophical thought, and looks at how we have been disenchanted of the world that our ancestors once saw as mystical and spiritual, and something that has broken us down into a very materialistic people who are basically kind of lost of destiny and meaning. And so I'd thoroughly recommend that you give it a watch. It's very, very compelling, and from there I will continue on with Gibraltar. So, with some context as to the history of Britain and Gibraltar, there was a time, I know it's not in our lifetime, of course, but there was a time when Britain was actually cool and kicked ass around the world. And one of the wars...
I don't believe it.
Well, one of the wars in which we did it was one called the War of the Spanish Succession, in which we took Gibraltar. It was a joint Anglo-Dutch effort, and we took Gibraltar from the Spanish in that war. And that was in 1704, and then the Treaty of Ulrich at the end of that war in 1713 officially ceded the territory of Gibraltar to us, and we have held on to it ever since for over three centuries now.
We weren't bad friends with the Dutch at the time. I remember just before that, in the mid-1600s, we actually stuck around with the Dutch and kicked the French out in Bruges, and from that we got gin.
Favourite pastime.
Yeah. We've had a bit of a roller coaster relationship with the Dutch over the years.
We have. Certainly have. So this...
You have Dutch...
So, but it comes back to what you were saying in your segment, Harry, about who civilized this place, you know?
Yeah. Who built it?
Who built it? Because the fact of the matter is that the Spanish obviously had their own reconquista against the Moors in Spain, and so they finally permanently regained Gibraltar from the Muslim Moors about 1500, and then held on to it for about 2 centuries, and then we have owned Gibraltar. Now it's been our sovereign territory for over 3 centuries.
Yeah.
And so we've had it a lot longer, and we've managed it very, very well. And that's not just me being jingoistically, nonsensical. It's the fact that when you came to the 2002 referendum that Gibraltar had, 98% of them, the Gibraltarians, decided that they wanted to stay as a sovereign part of Britain.
Yeah, but they kind of
flashbacks to the Falklands here.
Mm-hmm.
But they did kick us in the teeth of the Brexit referendum, didn't they?
They did. So yes, this was that's the Brexit. I was just about to come to that.
Okay.
So then you had Gibraltar did vote 95%. 0.9 if I'm going to be pedantic, in order to remain.
Absolutely, they did.
And I can understand that from their perspective. They're cut off from the mainland. They have anxieties about, what it would mean for the borders going forward.
Well, they've got it now.
Well, they have got it now.
If you voted alongside us, and you'd got it properly, and we'd got a proper Brexit, and people in charge would have done it, this wouldn't be happening. But, if you go all weak...
Yes. Well, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Because David Lammy is a man who exudes weakness.
Oh, I was going to say, if you want weak, David Lammy.
And so, naturally, when it was announced that the David Lammy was going to visit Gibraltar for a post-Brexit deal with Spain, you can understand why we all decided to get a bit nervous. It wasn't exactly unfounded, was it?
No.
And all we could do was wait with bated breath and see what was going to come out of all of this.
Bad it was going to be.
And then we found out. So Lammy obviously sees this as an absolute win, says that Gibraltar's economy and way of life was under threat. I'll come back to what that threat was a little later in the segment. But he says, we've secured a practical solution which safeguards sovereignty, jobs and growth. Working in lockstep with Fabian Picardo, we've ensured Gibraltar's interests as part of the UK family are at the heart of this agreement. So, what is that agreement? Well, as it turns out, this agreement, actually, I'll just move on to this one for the case of time. The agreement involves certain things that UK will political agreement, so we will continue to have autonomy over the military base on Gibraltar. However, one of the key things is that we have essentially handed over security, all of the border security, to the EU, to foreigners. Right, so that means that's put us in a position where now someone coming from Britain, from the mainland, if you want to go and visit a British sovereign territory, you're going to have your passport checked by people from the EU. The EU now, in all but name, controls the border.
I feel like we need to get on a quick flight down to Gibraltar with our passports and deliberately just go see whether they won't let us in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. The population of Gibraltar is about 40,000, right? It's just a little bit below that. And about 38% of the people in Gibraltar, about 15,000, cross that border every day, that hard border between Gibraltar and Spain, in order to get to work, just coming and going as it is. Now, this has worked perfectly fine for quite a long while, but you see, when David Lammy talks about threats that, are going to upset that equilibrium, well, these are threats from our beloved European allies, because the EU has a new border system, which is the entry-exit system, the EES, that it's putting forward, which was going to be a digital biometric system in order to, as it says, speed up and assess and track people around Europe so that they can tell who's outstaying their welcome, who's in what place at what time, and they'll have all of your information on the database as basically a form of digital ID, a digital passport.
It is.
And so Spain, yes, there was this exasperation with anxiousness with Spain trying to slam down the Schengen shutters. Now, it's no secret that Spain has wanted Gibraltar for a long, long time, right? So any deal that is beneficial to the EU and thereby beneficial to Spain is naturally, the Spanish wouldn't agree to anything if they didn't see it as a small step towards using, the soft encroachment of taking Gibraltar back for the Spanish government.
Yeah, I'd just wind them up. I'd give it Morocco. Say, sod it. Okay, you guys...
Open borders with Morocco.
Open borders with Morocco. You can have it. Here's yours.
Reconquista 2 electric
Exactly. I loved electric boogaloo.
So, yes, this obviously, as I said, means that there'll be a hard border with Europe, and the Britons will now have to have their passports checked. And this all obviously comes off the back of the Chagos deal as well. And so the fact that this was given away for essentially woke brownie points with the international elites, which from the best that I could dig into it, really did just seem to be what it was all down to. Obviously brings about the fact that there is no slight, there is no erosion of our status, of our power, what little power we actually have left.
A second top soft power in the world, apparently.
And what a comfort it is to us.
I was going to say,
international influence.
If that's so much international influence, if that's soft power, then I'd hate to see what hard power is, to be honest.
I sleep peacefully at night,
knowing
that the British state has made us number 2 in soft power around the world. It gives me so
much so to see that Chagos has gone, Gibraltar's gone, and those of you who are listening all the way down in the Falklands, be prepared that you're going back to Argentina. But the only good thing I would say is that at the moment you're joining an Argentina that is doing a lot more than we are in our country.
One other thing also, just to mention with this, that is worth bringing up, is because of the entry-exit system that the EU are intending to implement come October, November, they keep pushing it back. Oddly enough, these bureaucrats can't seem to just hit a deadline. But then I suppose neither can we. But that's
the nature of bureaucracy.
But we're the bureaucrats too. So this the system is going to be that there's going to be a short stay, which means that those travelling can go for 90 days out of a 180-day period. But if a British person wants to visit Gibraltar, then that system is going to be enforced now by the EU themselves. And so the EU will decide how long, theoretically, It's the fact that this is all obviously up in the air. Nothing's been ratified yet. This deal.
Theoretically, I could go to Gibraltar and have to be kicked out after 180 days.
This is the point, yes. And you're trusting the EU to basically just let you come and go as a British citizen.
I wouldn't trust the EU on this point as far as I could throw them.
No, so. you have some experience on this front.
Absolutely, to be honest.
So
there's a phrase you speak with. What is it? We're talking about American reconquisters. You speak with forked tongue.
So I suppose the question that now ends up on everyone's minds is, well, you've given away Chagos unnecessarily, without provocation, without mandate, and you've essentially conceded the borders of Gibraltar as well. How long before we concede on the Falklands? That war that we fought to defend it as a British sovereign territory, which is still within living memory.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I remember it, and certainly I would now get down onto the bookies and see if you can put some good odds on, because the Falklands are going. There's no doubt about it. They'll have that. If Labour stays in, they'll find some sort of deal to offload it as well quickly.
Well, the question is, like any of these things, I suppose, when it comes to a question like the British sovereignty of Gibraltar, does the British state care more about holding it than the Spanish state cares about acquiring it? And I would suggest that the Spanish state cares about taking it more than our parliament cares about holding on to it.
Yeah.
And I would suggest exactly the same about the Falklands. Millet would be more interested in taking it than our parliament really cares about maintaining it.
And what is the importance of Gibraltar to us as a piece of rock? It's a military base. And why is it important for a military base? Because the seaways getting across into Africa. We lose that. We lose global influence with the United States and in our Four Eyes principles, because we've got some listening posts and bases that we can put people in that can get into Africa. The Spanish would love to have that and say, we're now the key people that can do that. And the same with the Falklands. The Falklands are a key point for looking at the resources and research that's down in that area of the world. And we lose that, then we lose a whole chunk of influence on that, and the Argentinians would gain it. So it's about losing influence and losing power. And you lose these things as a chip by chip, then you lose influence globally. So no one's going to look at you more significantly just because you hold the land. We have a license to go to Chagos. The Americans are going to say, you're paying for it. And Mauritians are going, hey, thanks very much for a tax-free life. But we just got it there. We're no longer seen as influence about that. We're just seen as weak.
Well, we are weak.
That's right. We're weak. And we're led by weak people.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously this particular article I pulled up is just to do with British Airways calling the Falklands by its Spanish name. But it speaks to... I will consider it as an omen of things to come, a poor portent of the future. Yes. And so, yeah, obviously...
So how did the BA call it? Was it on the flight itself?
I think they're having an internal investigation into how it happened, but yes, it was on one of their flights.
Viva la Malvinas.
Yes. So yeah, it was one of the it was Port Stanley that it came up with whatever the Spanish name for Port Stanley was.
Oh my word.
Yes.
I mean, that's not easy.
That's Puerto Argentino.
Oh my word. And that was on the board.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry about all this with Gibraltar, another day in the life under Labour, and just sort of the treasonous British establishment. Obviously nothing's set in stone yet, but between our parliament and the Gibraltarian one, I don't see this turning back into our favour, but I suppose time will tell.
Well, it's clearly, when you've got Fabio, I met Fabio Picard, and you did the Gibraltar man, Quizlink is all I could ever think about that in particularly individual in the way that he represented the people of Gibraltar. I mean, for him, he was just about simply how can I cling on to the European Union with any kind of funding and ideology, but I still want to have my cake and eat it by being part of the UK rather than standing strong. This is not the sort of person that we would have put in charge of there in the 1700s. In the 1700s, we would put some sort of like naval officer in there who said, "This is Britain. We're going to defend it with all our costs." Not someone who was twiddling around little rooms and ignoring those people who were in the Parliament who actually believed in his little island that he was in charge of, being part of the UK and having a very important role.
Yes.
He'd much happy just cozy up with all the others. Why? I don't know. Were there certain levels of funding that they enjoyed on a particular level for organisations that he, friends, family, contacts, people who influence him might have had? Goodness knows. One would never have thought that in anything to do with the EU.
No, quite true.
The process of distinguishing science from superstition had begun, and the great minds of the era dedicated themselves to this work.